A San Francisco Bay Area city is moving ahead with its first-in-the-nation plan to use the government's constitutional power of eminent domain to seize hundreds of underwater mortgages. The Richmond City Council voted 4-3 September 11th to set up a joint powers authority to bring more cities into the plan. Mayor Gail McLaughlin says the city of El Monte of Southern California has expressed an interest, and she believes other cities will follow. Well, we've been covering for years the so-called housing crisis here in the USA. As Laura Flanders reported just recently, over 10 million Americans have lost their homes in just the last 6 years. In every poll, people say the federal government should step in to stop it, but that hasn't happened. So can cities actually make the difference? Save people, save their homes? Trina Scordo is executive director of New Jersey Communities United, and she's working in the city of Newark to follow the path of Richmond. Trina, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Laura.
Is that a fair way to put it, that you want to be like Richmond?
We are incredibly proud and supportive of what has happened in Richmond because Newark is very similar circumstances.
Talk about it a little bit. What's the life like these days for those who are struggling in this situation in Newark?
Newark has thousands of homeowners who are underwater, upside down in their mortgages.
And just remind people what that means.
It basically means that the value, what you owe on your house, is worth more than the assessed value of your home. And that happened as a result of the housing bubble. When the housing bubble crashed, everybody's home values dropped, but that didn't change the amount of debt that they owed on their home. So in Newark, this is a very significant crisis. You have many people who cannot keep up with mortgage payments for a number of reasons that we will talk about. A number of people who are fighting foreclosure. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but many, many homes that have been foreclosed on and are sitting empty with no one in them, even though there is such a need for housing in the city of Newark.
Now, there have been various attempts going back to the initial TARP, Troubled Asset Reallocation Program, authorized in 2008 under the Bush administration to try to help people in trouble. Why has it been so hard for individual homeowners to resolve this or to get their mortgages reevaluated?
Because the power has rested solely with banks and with Wall Street. So even in the case of that money that was supposed to go to the public good to help people, to help homeowners, Wall Street controlled that money. And so instead of putting it to use to help people stay in their homes and to reset mortgages, they gave themselves bonuses. This is where it's not funny. I mean, this is exactly what they did. They laid off workers at the same time that they were giving themselves bonuses. And more recently, a number of the whistleblower stories that have come out with, banks telling workers to not do principal write-down, to lose paperwork, to not call such and such a homeowner back. And this is what they did with public money. So there's a failed effort from the start and not enough accountability to the public, frankly, in how that money was used.
And so I think it's the Troubled Asset Relief Program, to get it right. What difference does Richmond make? What does it mean? What's the significance of the vote that was taken September 11th?
So it's symbolic and very real at the same time. Symbolic because I feel like it represents the pushback on Wall Street and banks to say you are no longer going to bully working class communities. You're no longer going to bully cities. You're no longer going to bully communities. We are going to push back on you. That's the one very significant piece. And the other part is that Richmond is paving the way for an actual solution to this crisis.
And how will it work? So what does it mean to use eminent domain?
So eminent domain is the tool that gets us to what we need. So I want to take a step back. What we need to solve the foreclosure crisis is large-scale principal reduction. It means that we need not 50 or 60 homeowners who are able to get their homes reset to fair market value, but hundreds of thousands of people who need their mortgages set to fair market value. So eminent domain is a tool that allows cities not to seize the home, but to seize the bad debt, and then work with an investor, whoever those investors might be, to actually reset the value of the home to fair market value so that people can afford to make their payments.
So that's a nice, as they say, nice as in fine distinction.
Absolutely.
Not the home.
It's not the home.
But the debt.
It's the debt. It's the mortgage.
They offer to buy it first from the banks?
Many of these troubled mortgages are held in trust, so it's not necessarily one bank that has a mortgage. It could be, but most of these are held in trusts, and I'm sure there are economists who can explain it better than I can. So the way it works is, if I'm the city of Newark, we would find a third party, a partner, investors, because you need resources to be able to make offers on these mortgages. The investor goes and makes a fair market value offer to these trusts. Say, we're willing to buy all these mortgages in this trust for this amount, it's fair market value. In the best of circumstances, those trusts say, absolutely, we'll take that offer, great. In the worst case scenario, which we anticipate, is that they say, absolutely not, we're not going to sell. And that's where the power of the city to come in and say, we, in the public good, the public interest of our city, in order to keep people in their homes and in order to avoid vacant properties, we're going to seize these mortgages, and we are going to, we're going to seize them, and we're going to allow this deal to go through. That is essentially a simple way of explaining how it works.
And why is it so controversial? Because we should say that there are Wall Street lobbyists up in arms against this idea, the
Absolutely.
American Bankers Association
Yes.
and others. And then there's a constant drumbeat coming from the right in the media about how this is a threat to private property overall. And to be fair, there has been resistance also in progressive circles over the years to the use of eminent domain.
Absolutely.
In that case, mostly to seize property, to flatten some ground, to allow a big box store to buy in, Walmart or something like that. Let's sort through this for us.
So the reason that there is resistance from the banks and from Wall Street is if these plans begin to move forward, kind of the whole house of cards starts to crumble. And the fraud that they've perpetuated and the abuse that they've perpetuated over how I think we're entering our 6th year becomes clear. There's a reason they're fighting so hard. And it's not because they're suddenly anti-eminent domain. I mean, I always find this interesting. For years, I've organized in communities where eminent domain was used to extract wealth.
Right.
And I never heard banks say a word.
Well, it's like being for states' rights until you get to gay marriage.
Absolutely. So this is the same thing. So now, because it's about putting back the wealth into communities of color, we need to be clear that that's what we're talking about. Now, suddenly, banks and SIFMA and Wall Street are very concerned about eminent domain. It's not that. It's about protecting their own interests and being able to cover up what they've done since 2008.
And so what is the likelihood that you think that some of the people that you work with will be able to get something similar passed through in Newark? Because Newark's a very different place from the Bay Area.
Only that it's on the other coast. It is the same. I mean, I mean that in the sense that working class community of color, struggling very deeply with the foreclosure crisis. I think Newark, as well as some surrounding cities, it's quite likely that this will move. It is part of what we are working on. We have been having meetings with local elected officials from various cities in and around Newark. There is tremendous interest in moving this forward. All eyes on Richmond, of course. So Richmond is a big win, not just because of Richmond, but because of what this could mean nationally for many cities who have been desperate for a solution.
The city of Richmond also benefited, I think, from the mobilization of community, of grassroots groups.
Yes, definitely. And one thing I would say about this, particularly, I think the red flags from the progressive community around eminent domain has been that there needs to be community oversight, and it's absolutely correct. And our organization would take that same position. We have members that we organize who are struggling with foreclosure, and the only way that this moves forward is if they are part of this process, they are part of the solution, and that everything happens under their watch.
We have some footage of your organization at work in a protest. Do you want to set this up?
Sure. So Grace Alexander, who is one of our members, is fighting Bank of America on foreclosure. Just to lay out Grace's story briefly, and then we'll talk about the protest. Grace was working 3 jobs, not 1, 3 jobs, making her mortgage payments, and then the economy crashed, and she lost 2 of those 3 jobs. She repeatedly reached out to Bank of America for help. Can you help me refinance? Can you help me work out a payment plan? I can make payments, just not these payments. And they refused over and over and over. They draw out the process, a lot of these things that we've been hearing. When they finally said, sure, Grace, we'll work with you, they said, we'll do a trial modification. And they sent her an offer that is $300 more than what her mortgage payment is now. To a woman who's working 3 jobs down to 1, and their solution was, well, you haven't been able to make payments, so now you need to prove you can make payments, but it has to be $300 more so that we know you're able to pay.
Grace Alexander, and we're here today to let Bank of America know that we mean business, that we're trying to get a principal reduction.
We have a delegation of very courageous people who are going to go inside with Grace Alexander. For those of you who may not know, Grace has been in a fight with Bank of America to save her home for 2 years.
Nothing posted saying that the bank is going to be closed, so we have every right to go in this bank.
Back in January, Grace, as well as she's a union member, as well as her union, a number of our organization, Communities United, and other community and housing advocates put together a protest. We marched on Bank of America in Jersey City to demand that she speak to someone, which she went with all her papers, to get a resolution to this, which is basically principal reduction. And Bank of America's response was to shut down the office for a day. We had elected officials from Jersey City. We had the faith community with us. We had her union with her. We had all people who were there to support her. We did not send 60 people into the bank. We sent Grace with a delegation, largely elected official and faith leaders. And their response was to shut it down and not speak with her. So say where the accountability is. She has been in touch with everyone at all levels of Bank of America.
What is your organization going to do next?
We are very much, on the large scale, very much moving to push for eminent domain as a solution to this crisis in and around New Jersey, where we have members, as well as we've had different elected officials reach out to us to ask us, can you explain this to us? Our city is hurting. How can this work? What do we need to do?
So this could spread.
This absolutely, it will. It's not could, it will. It absolutely will.
Trina Scordo, thanks so much for coming in and joining us.
Thank you.